I don't know him.
I'm going live on YouTube. Should I go ahead and go live on YouTube?
Yeah, and James, I'm gonna make, just before you do that, I'm gonna make 2 announcements to open us up. Has Rick joined yet?
No, Rick hasn't.
I just texted him like a minute ago to see where he is.
Before you go live, I'm going to make 2 announcements. I'm going to tell all media, say that this is for media only. Any members of the public should please leave the Zoom and watch via YouTube, and that we ask that everyone have cameras muted so reporters covering this can use the video for their newscast. Is that reasonable?
Yeah.
Anything,
Nicole,
and I'll ask them.
Nicole, Daniel Anderson, Nathan. Yeah.
Oh, you got quite a few coming in. It's Tiffany Sherrod.
Bigots.
Okay.
Tiffany Sherrod, she's an assignment desk person.
Okay, and the other thing I'm going to ask them is to please mute themselves and to use the chat to ask their questions when we get to the.
Yeah, we actually can send them a message in into the room.
Okay, all right.
So you want them to do what again? Well,
Yeah,
just your co-host. Your co-host, so you can send the chat.
I have it open.
Okay, your co-host. You can go ahead and send the chat to the waiting room.
Okay.
Hey, James, this is the first time I think we ever use a 3-pronged attack on this thing.
Yeah.
But you got 13 people waiting in the waiting room. Sure.
Rick's not here yet.
Yeah, we need Rick to get on. Actually, we could go ahead and let people in, and I can go over the ground rules while we're waiting Rick for.
Okay, start letting them in.
So Sean is. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jessica Corbett. I'm the Director of External Affairs for Fulton County, and I just want to thank everyone for joining us. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. Mr. Barron will be joining us. Wanted to let you know this briefing is for reporters. So if you are not a reporter, we certainly invite you to view this session on our FGTV live stream. We would also ask that we will be, as soon as we get started in just a couple of minutes, we will be, we'll have Mr. Barron in speaker view so you guys can see it. For our broadcast folks, I want to make sure that you have a visual of him. So we would ask that reporters keep your cameras muted so that you're not showing up in everyone else's shot. And then we will use the chat feature during Q&A. So when we, if you have a question, if you could just type it into chat or let us know that you have a question, then we will call on you when that time is after Mr. Barron kind of gives us his opening remarks. Obviously, we're less than 2 weeks out from elections. This has been really unprecedented. Fulton County elections always have a lot going on, and we know that you guys have a lot of questions for us. So wanted, just for anyone who just joined, 2 things. Please, if you're not a reporter, if you could watch the FGTV live stream of this session. This session is for reporters. If you are a reporter covering this, please keep your camera on mute so you don't show up in everyone else's shot. And then we're going to use the chat feature. So just say, hey, I have a question. When we start Q&A, we will call on you in the order of chat. With that, Mr. Barron is on the line now. So we will go into speaker view. So reporters, please mute your cameras so that we can see Mr. Barron, and we're going to go into speaker view and let Mr. Barron give his opening remarks.
Hi there. Good afternoon, everybody.
Mr. Barron, we cannot hear you.
It doesn't show. It shows that I'm. It doesn't show that I'm muted.
We have an audio problem with Mr. Barron.
I'm hearing him.
Same here. I hear him.
Okay,
Not
other
muted.
people can hear him. All right,
can
go
hear him.
ahead. And will our production team please put Mr. Barron into speaker view so he's the primary speaker on the screen?
Okay, you're ready. All right, Mr. Barron.
All right, we're ready.
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for all joining. I wanted to let everyone know that we are done processing our. We're up to date processing all the absentee by mail applications that we received through mail, the snail mail, USPS, through election, through the inbox, and all of our faxes. We're processing everything that is current now. If voters out there have not, if they check the My Voter page of the Secretary of State's website and they do not see an issue date by their name, then please contact us at 404-612-7060 and let us know whether we can, if you have submitted an application and it is not showing up on the My Voter page. In addition, next week, we're going to open up our, we're going to expand the hours of our early voting locations from 7 a.m. to 4:30 to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at 6 locations. We are also looking at opening 2 additional locations, and information off at one of those sites we are picking up from those drop boxes daily. And we did open Wolf Creek Library today as a 6th early voting location. So we have the South Annex, we have the Wolf Creek Library, we also have C.T. Martin Auditorium, Sandy Springs Library, Alpharetta Library, as well as Garden Hills Elementary. Those sites are currently open 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. every day. And as I said, those will open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. next week. And with that, I can take any questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. All right, so we are ready to start questions now. And the first question is from Maria Boynton. Maria, are you ready?
I can't hear her.
Okay, Maria, take
But I
yourself-
can take, there are 2 questions I see in the
Okay,
chat.
can you
Hold
hear me
on.
now? Can you hear me
Okay.
now?
Oh, yes.
Yep, go
Okay,
ahead.
great. Hey, Fulton County, thanks, Rick, for doing this. Going backwards here to the election, the absentee ballot request forms, how has that gone in Fulton County? How is the process moving along in terms of getting those requests in and then sending the ballots out? How has that process been going for Fulton County, Rick?
Well, the process is that we initially, the Secretary of State's office took the onus of mailing out the applications to everyone, which we were grateful for. They sent those out. We processed them, and then they are mailed out by a vendor that the Secretary of State contracted with, Runbeck. So those are being mailed by Runbeck, who's located in Arizona. We initially, I think what happened with us was on the day that we received the bulk of our absentee applications on April 9th, one of our staff members died of COVID. And so we were off that afternoon and the next day, and that was Easter weekend. And then we had to close down for 3 days to decontaminate the office. So 6 of the first 9 days that we were receiving applications through the Postal Service, we were unable to do any processing during that time. Since then, this has been a big learning opportunity for us. It has not gone as quickly as we hoped, but we finally did get caught up, and we can look forward to the future and having this process go smoother. And I also understand that I think the state is looking at an online application for later on this year, in order to help speed the process up, because then what'll happen is those applications will go straight into ElectionNet. They'll be in a dashboard on ElectionNet, and that will enable us to process those ballots quicker.
Rick, I'm going to move on to the next question because we have a lot. And then Maria, if we're able to come back to you, we will. The next question is from Emil at WABE.
Yes, hi, Rick. My question was about poll workers and the staffing levels for those. You mentioned opening up a couple of more polling sites for early voting. What are your staffing levels looking like?
Well, that's what we're working on right now, is to find additional staff for those polling sites. And once we have those confirmed, the additional staff that we're seeking, then we will announce the sites. I want to make sure that we have the staff before we announce the sites. And at that point, because if we're going to open one in the south part of the county, we need to open one in the north part of the county as well. So we need to be able to staff both sites in order to do that.
Okay, great, Rick. Thank you. Moving on to Tim Perry. Tim, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you so much. You mentioned the 3 days that your office was closed as one of the reasons why there were delays, but can you speak to any other factors that your office might have experienced in explaining those delays, and why some people who were submitting ballots over email experienced larger delays? Thank you.
Yeah, we did have some issues with ballots that were in the email. And I think one of the processes we changed midway through was we were batching those envelope or those applications, and when we were batching them, we were printing them, and there were lots of technical difficulties with regard to printing those applications, and so we changed the process part of the way through, which was just to process them right out of the email rather than to print them and batch them with the other applications that we received through the U.S. Postal Service.
Thank you, Rick. David Wicker has a question. David's question was about concerns about Marta's limited bus service affecting turnout. David, feel free to join us or ask that in person if you want.
With regard to Marta's bus service affecting turnout, I'm unsure how that will affect it. I mean, we've had, we had one point had 198 polling locations for this election. We are down to 165 locations as it stands right now. And we are in the process of getting head of household mailings out to all the voters in those affected precincts. We will also have 1 to 2 people at each of the old polling sites directing people to the new polling sites, as well as having signs at the old polling sites. We've even, we lost another site on Friday, and it took us until Tuesday to get that location, a new location sewed up in that precinct. And that was unfortunately at Grady High School, where we had assigned some voters that we had to move because a church had decided not to be a polling site this election. So we are struggling with election day locations, with fewer locations. You know, with regard to we can get equipment into all those locations, but there will be more people assigned to some of those election day sites than we normally have. So it is going to be a challenge with the restrictions on physical distance to allow for all of those people to go to all of those places. So we're hoping that the people that have requested absentee ballots will return their absentee ballots to alleviate some of the line issues that we may face.
Rick, that's a good segue to Maggie's question. Maggie Lee with Supporter Report said, can you talk about the situations with lines? Are you still seeing lines at some locations and long waits?
We aren't seeing long waits. I mean, I think the South Annex has continued to have lines, but like, for example, what was reported to us today and yesterday is that the lines at the South Annex, even though we might have 30 people that are in line, the wait time has been reduced significantly there. It can be anywhere from 15 to 35 minutes from the time you get in line until the time you walk out after voting. And so that's much improved since early last week, the first couple days where we had fewer machines assigned to those locations. For example, at CT Martin, we moved into a larger room and moved more ballot marking devices into that room at CT Martin. And we added some check-in stations. We also added check-in stations and expanded into another area at the South Annex. And we put more ballot marking devices there. We also did the same up at Alpharetta Library. We had, I think when we made some of the decisions on early voting and even with regard to election day early, that was a lot at a time where everything was closed down and we were making decisions based on the health of our poll workers, the health of our own staff, and concern for the voters. I mean, I think Fulton County, we're the only county in the state that's had a death of a staff member, and we also had another staff member, the one that was overseeing all the absentee by mail. He contracted COVID and had battled that for 3 weeks as well. So we've had some unique issues. I think there have been some other counties last week that have had to deal with COVID related matters too.
Thank you, Rick. Next question is from Stephen Fowler, GPB. Rick, he says, Rick, there are some people like my wife who submitted an email application weeks ago and never heard back, or her application was never processed. What should these people do?
If you haven't heard back from us, or if you've gone to the My Voter page at the Secretary of State's website and you do not see an issue date by your name, you can contact our office at 404-612-7060 and let us know that you submitted an application so that we can do the research to see if we have that application and we can then get it processed right away. If we didn't receive the application, we can either have a voter resubmit an application, or we do have early voting and election day available to voters.
Thank you, Rick. Another question from Maggie Lee. What is the situation with poll workers? Do you still need to hire folks for election day?
We are, right now we're okay with election day poll workers. Most of the poll workers went through in-person training before the presidential preference primary. We have supplemented that with a video training that the poll workers have gone through. And as of Tuesday morning, we had about 900 had completed that training, and they have through the end of this week to complete that training. We were hoping for a minimum of 1,050 poll workers at our 165 sites for election day. We are recruiting backup personnel to assign to those locations on election day in order to maintain staffing at all the sites around the county. but it has been more of a challenge. We've had a lot of people drop out due to COVID reasons before this election. This has been, an unprecedented situation for not only Fulton County, but other counties around the state. I think one other thing that has impacted the lines at some of the locations has been that a number of people have either canceled their ballot by mail applications, or they are bringing in their ballots and canceling the ballot in hand to vote on the machines.
Thank you, Rick. Wanted to now turn it to Matthew Van at ABC News. Matthew, are you still with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so just want to see if the director can clarify. When you say you're up to date with applications, can you say that 100% of the applications that were sent in so far have been processed? And secondly, just another follow. I understand that there was a COVID-related illness that delayed things, but why wasn't there a decision to process every application in real time, like some of the other counties across the state?
Well, I think, as I explained earlier, six of the first 9 days when we started after we started receiving applications, we either were closed for decontamination, or the staff that was handling that, one of their coworkers died. So we had a couple special circumstances in that regard. So we were trying to process those in real time. As far as what we have processed now, we have processed all of the email dates that we have received. We are processing the new applications as they come in. We have processed all of the mail applications that we received through the Postal Service, and all of the faxed applications. All of those are up to date, which would mean that we are through we're processing what we've received yesterday and today.
Thank you, Rick. This point, we have Ben Brash had a question. It says, Ben at the AJC, for those whose application was processed over the holiday weekend, do you recommend people snail mail them back, or would you rather folks use a drop box? Either way, why so?
Well, I think the drop boxes, we've got 20 of them located throughout the county, so we have them conveniently located throughout the county. So my recommendation is, if you're worried about whether they would make it back via US mail, to drop those in the drop boxes, because they're surveilled 24 hours a day, as well as being convenient, and we pick those ballots up on a daily basis. You can put them in the mail too. I mean, for ones that were processed over the weekend, usually Runback has a 48 to 72 hour turnaround, and then it can be anywhere from probably 3 to 5 days to get the mail here from Arizona.
Thank you, Rick. Another question from, well, I think Matthew has asked this question. Tim Perry had a question about Runback. Tim, would you like to ask that?
Yeah, I was just wondering if using the outside vendor in Arizona, has that been a factor in voters experiencing delays? And then you just said that you've processed all of the email applications, but I'm told that there have been 2 different email addresses. And so how are you 100% sure that you have processed every single email application that's come to you?
Well, the emails have come to both boxes, and we process out of both of those boxes. So if they were all came to one, it would be no different. It's just that we had we were setting up a new email box this year, which makes more sense to have it elections.absentee, but that is not the one that was listed I think it didn't go out on all the applications that went out to all the voters. So the elections.voter registration one did. So for now, starting next year, we'll use the elections.absentee one once we get through this year. And that will, that'll be what we'll do going forward. What was your other question?
The Arizona vendor.
I mean, what they do, they have to process those within 48 to 72 hours. So the only, it's probably quicker to have something mailed within the state, but I think Runbeck, from what I know, is that they're able to they're a vendor that can handle this sort of volume. So I don't know that anybody if they would have gone with somebody local, it wasn't, this was somebody that the Secretary of State contracted with, so that's better to ask them the question. But I think this is a vendor that can handle this sort of volume, and I think there is probably 2 to 3 additional days by mail from there, but I don't see that that's really an issue that we've had to deal with at this point.
Thank you. Rick, we have as we wrap up here, Maria had another question. Maria, do you want to go ahead and ask that?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes,
ma'am.
So, Mr. Barron, Fulton County has plenty of elderly voters among those who are challenged health-wise. What do you tell the voters about being prepared when they come to the polling location? Are there any items they should can bring for their comfort?
we recommend that everybody wear some sort of face covering when they come to the polls. Our poll workers are going to be outfitted, and during early voting, we have sneeze guards, we have face masks for them. We also have hand sanitizer. We purchase styluses ahead of the election so that we wouldn't have to have voters touching the voting machines and have to sanitize the voting machines. If you actually sanitize the voting machines, you have to shut them down and then bring them back up, which would have slowed processing time. So we decided to go with the styluses. Those are sanitized between each voter, and it's much easier to do it that way. On election day, they will all have, and all of our poll workers also have gloves. We are providing gloves and masks to all of the poll workers for election day, as well as sanitizer, and we will have the styluses in all those precincts as well.
Good.
I would recommend the face covering for everybody.
Thank you, Rick. I just wanted to see if there are any last questions, and just want to thank everyone who has participated today. Someone just sent me a question about, Rick, you mentioned this earlier, when a voter who has requested an absentee ballot shows up in person at the polls, that does kind of create a clog in the process. Could you explain that again? Because I think there probably are a lot of people in that situation.
Well, if you have an absentee application, what happens with a voter that comes in and wants to cancel their absentee ballot, they have to sign an affidavit, and that usually, what we do is we recommend to our poll workers that they call the office when the voter arrives, in order for us to do that, to enable the polling staff to then issue a card for them to vote in person. It's easier to do that, but it does slow the line down. I mean, I think all the counties across the state have had to deal with this issue with voters canceling absentee ballot applications. That's something that isn't unique to this election, and it's not unique to our county. This happens every election, although because of the volume, I mean, just to give everyone an idea of the difference in volume. In 2016, we received 947 absentee ballots for the general primary. We've already processed over 127,000 applications as of this morning. And we've already received about 32,000, not counting the mail that we received today. Therefore, we've already received more than we would for a presidential election and we still have 2 weeks until the election. So this is a completely different election than we've run before. We still have to do election day. We still have to do early voting. But on top of that, we've added this absentee by mail. And so it's almost as though we've added a different type of an election on top of the one that we're already running. We've got our normal voting infrastructure that we're preparing to put out into the field. And then we're also processing these applications. So it has split our resources. Now we've been able to get really good help from the county with people that are on administrative leave to help us. We've got help from the tax commissioner's office, from the tax assessor's office, from finance, from the library staff. And that's been really valuable. Some of that staff has had to go back to their normal duties. So we've had some of them rotating in and out. But one good thing about working for Fulton County is that they are always very supportive of us when it comes to the needs that we have to help serve the voters. You know, and it hasn't been ideal to reduce our early voting locations. Normally we had planned on having 22 to 24 locations plus our outreach locations. And when we made the decision to go down to four locations, which we've now expanded to 6 so far, it was all because of the health of our workers and the health of the voters. That was the main objective behind that. We recognized that we got behind with the absentee applications, and therefore we've expanded our early voting locations, which we will do again next week, provided we can get the right amount of staff. And I think we're expanding some, but not anywhere near what we normally have. And I think had this been a normal situation, we would have had our regular 22 to 24 locations, but we wouldn't have been able to staff that many locations this time, had we wanted to.
Rick, a follow-up question on early voting. You mentioned that the time will soon be 7 p.m. When does that go into effect?
The closing time for early voting at 7 p.m. will be starting next week. So we'll be open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the locations next week. And we're open 7 a.m. to 4:30 the remainder of this week. That's through Saturday. And then beginning on Monday, it'll be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. At the 6 sites we have. And we will look to, as I said again, announce a couple more sites as soon as we have it confirmed that we have the staff for that.
And you added 1 site today, correct?
Yes, and we added Wolf Creek Library today.
Thank you. One other question. Are you concerned that voters who have not yet received their ballots will not have enough time to get them returned before June 9th?
Anything that we've processed through today, I mean, voters should receive those in the mail next week. So, and then we do have the drop boxes that will be out there, and they will be open until 7 p.m. on election day. And we will have people at those locations at 7 p.m. on election day to get all those ballots collected, and but we will have to lock up the boxes once those ballots are collected on election night.
Thank you. And can you give a percentage or figure of the number? I'm sorry.
Hello?
Rick, yeah, thank you. Can you give a percentage figure of the number of absentee ballot applications that have been received and processed?
We through this morning, we had processed just over 127,000 applications, and we'd received just over 32,000 applications, or 32,000 ballots. That number, the number of ballots that we've received is going up by the day. And so we expect that to get heavier and heavier. Starting next week on June 1st, we will be start opening and scanning the ballots. We won't be tabulating them, but we will open and tabulate those June 1st through the 6th at Pryor Street. And then after that, we will move to the Georgia World Congress Center on Sunday, the 7th. We will be there to open and process all day on Monday and then all day on Election Day in order to get all the ballots processed and tabulated on Tuesday.
Thank you. Wanted to, all right, I think that has captured the questions we've received from the reporters on the line. I want to thank everyone. We will continue to provide updates. As Mr. Barron said, we hope to be able to provide some additional resources in the next few days. So just want to thank everyone for your questions and for your time and for always helping us get the word out to voters. We do have, Rick, before we sign off, there was one more thing I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned earlier that we did have a lot of polling place changes for Election Day.
Yes.
Voters are going to be getting something telling them about that. Could you elaborate on that just a second?
Yeah, we have a head of household mailing that's going out to all the voters in the affected precincts, and there are a number of precincts. I think we're up to 44 precincts now that have been affected by polling place changes, and that head of household mailing will be going out first class mail, and we will, and as well, we had to order precinct cards, and those will get out too. It's a lot of the polling place changes. I mean, we've had polling place changes up through Friday, and it's been difficult for us because it's been a moving target, because in some instances, if we've assigned precincts to one location because another location has dropped out, and then the location that we assigned it to decides to drop out, then it's been a domino effect. Most of the locations that we've lost have all but two have been COVID related. A few of them have been schools that, because the election was changed due to the pandemic, changed to June 9th, we lost some of the schools because they were going to be undergoing renovation. A lot of the others are some churches and private facilities that had concerns about holding an election in their facility with at the same time as this pandemic has been happening. We've also lost our senior assisted living centers, which is understandable, as they want their residents to be safe. So those are the locations that we have lost along the way. And we have been having to consolidate precincts, which is that's not unique to Fulton County. I think that's been happening in many of the counties statewide. Some of the rural counties, they only have a couple locations in there in county buildings, but we rely on a lot of private buildings because our county's so large and the precincts are so numerous. Therefore, I think we're a little bit more vulnerable to this type of thing with polling places than some other counties may be. And it's unfortunate. I mean, I don't like to change polling places at all. So this has been something that we've had to deal with on a day-by-day basis, pretty much since, I think, starting towards the middle of April, we've been losing polling places almost daily.
Great. Thank you very much, Rick. Appreciate it. Again, thanks to everyone for joining, and we'll send some follow-up notes and provide an update hopefully in a few days. Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody.